podcast you've been looking for all along. Step into the life of urban exploration with guests from around the world. Welcome to No Tracers. Welcome back to No Tracers. My name is K, just the letter K. I am known as no.tracers on Instagram or No Tracers on TikTok. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. This podcast is all about urban exploration, and this week on the podcast, I'm speaking with Vincent, otherwise known as Lost Americana. This guy is known for his abandoned farm photography, and I wanted to get him on the podcast to share his stories, his insights. He actually shoots on film, so I wanted to have him come talk about why he loves film so much and why he likes to print out these photos and what he does with those prints. He's also looking to start a book, so hopefully after this podcast, you guys will reach out to him and show some interest in that book and support him in that way. Before we get into the podcast, there's a few housekeeping things I want to let you know about. The first of which being, I actually have my own book called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. And if you want to get a copy of that and support my artwork, you can do so at notracers.com/shop. If you guys want to see my photos, read my blog, you can either go to No Tracers on Instagram or notracers.com and you can read the blog. If you want to see some of Lost Americana's photos while we are talking, I've actually made a YouTube version of this podcast. It's up on the Just the Letter K YouTube channel. And if you want to watch this instead of listen to it, you can see his photos as well and videos. So just head over to the Just the Letter K YouTube channel and subscribe today and check that out. These episodes come out every Friday, so if you're new to the podcast, if it's your first time listening, or if you're not already, please hit that subscribe button so that you get notified every time a new episode comes out, which, like I said, is every single Friday at about 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're a veteran listener, please do me a huge favor and leave a rating and feedback on this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. It helps us find a broader audience. And I'm sure before you gave this podcast a listen, you scrolled down to the bottom of the page and you read the feedback that we got from other listeners. It really does help the podcast grow, especially on the Apple Podcast charts. So because there's only a few urban exploration podcasts, let's see if we can get to the top of that category and hold our ranking there. Thank you guys for listening and giving us 5 stars. We appreciate it. We being me and all my guests. The last thing I need to let you know about is that we have a partner on this podcast, and that is Liquid Death Water. I'm actually drinking some right now. I am murdering my thirst. Their motto is murder your thirst. It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's water, but it's very metal, if you will. So if you guys have never heard of Liquid Death Water, don't you worry. I've got an ad coming for you in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water. A water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. So if you want to support me or if you want to support what Liquid Death is doing, go to liquiddeath.com and use code JustTheLetterK for 10% off your order. That could be 1 case of water. It could be 20 cases of water. I see you guys ordering 20 cases of water. That's absolutely incredible. I do get a commission based off of how much water you buy. So if you guys do want 10% off, use that code or hit the direct link in the description. It will automatically apply that affiliate code for you when you click that link so you can automatically get your discount applied. Thank you, Liquid Death, for partnering with No Tracers and my other podcast project, Freelance, which is all about freelancing. If you guys are interested in that, definitely check that out. But without further ado, let's get into this podcast with Lost Americana. Please introduce yourself and how long you've been exploring to the No Tracers audience.
My name is Vincent Johnson. I am a full-time photojournalist and filmmaker in Chicago, Illinois, and I am probably most known for And why I'm here is for my Lost Americana documentary project.
So tell me what got you into exploring in the first place? What made you catch this bug?
You know, I think it's just in general, it's an interesting thing. I mean, everybody likes to explore to a certain extent, or at least I think most people do. There's an excitement to it. Mine, I think, maybe like a lot of people, started off accidentally. I was just in a photography elective class at a local junior college, was driving around looking for interesting things to shoot. And I think just about anybody who ever picked up a camera knows that, photographing people is usually not where you start. So you try to find things that are still and not moving. And I mean, what is more not moving than a barn that has been vacant for like, a decade or two? Took a couple of shots, didn't think too much of it, but, and then went away to college for photojournalism when I actually decided that photography was going to be a major that I wanted to do. And this was back in the mid 90s. So all film, boys and girls, dirty, dirty chemicals. And yeah, I was going off, and Lost Americana kind of started once again completely by accident. I was doing a project. I wanted to do a project on something called the Illinois and Michigan Canal here in Illinois. And I was trying to find like relics of it, just like what's left over. And quite frankly, there's nothing. It's just a big ditch filled with like swampy water and like, overgrown weeds. So it didn't lend itself very photographically. The greens and the browns didn't really make it for a color photography class. And so I'm about like 70 miles outside of Chicago now, driving back to the city, kind of dejected, and just started shooting barns. I took side roads home, just kind of slow boated it. It was just, like, well, I got some film rolls I'm gonna waste here before I get back to the city. And really liked some of the stuff that I was shooting. A lot of people liked what I was shooting, and I just kind of kept doing it. And it turned into one, it was a color photography project that turned into a photojournalism documentary project that turned into my senior seminar project. It's as I was joking earlier before we got on, it's the longest senior seminar class project ever now, going on 26 years.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. So, can you talk to me a little bit more about shooting on film, capturing these almost time capsules on film? A lot of explorers are digital shooters just because of either their age or it's easier or their preference, but
cheaper.
Yeah, a lot cheaper for sure. But can you tell me like what you love about film that makes you shoot with that?
Yeah. Okay. It's, I mean, I think the first thing is that's where I started. So, obviously back when I was shooting up until 2004, film that was it. If I wanted to take photos of stuff, I was shooting it on film. And then when I got my first digital camera, they were good. I mean, if you wanted to make an 8x10 with, I think my first was a Canon 20D. And then I got like a 30D, and they were all right for like an 8x10, maybe an 11x14, but the quality wasn't there. And I had a really good film scanner. I was still shooting 35 millimeter. The film camera that I still have to this day was, it was the last great film camera that Canon ever made. For all you gearheads out there, it was the 1N RS. And the RS stood for rapid shoot because it would go through 10 frames a second of film. So you could burn through a whole roll in like 3.5 seconds if you were really crazy about it. But yeah, so, from there, I kept shooting film along with the digital because I felt, at that point, like film was still a better quality than digital. And then I had also, while I was in college, had what we call a large format camera
Right.
that shoots 4x5 film. And all my teachers and the professors, I mean, I had some of my professors were Pulitzer Prize winners. I mean, like really prestigious people. And they're like, yeah, we love what you're doing. You need to have this not on 35. I mean, even 35 wasn't good enough for them. They're like, you need medium format, but honestly, you need to go 4x5 film. And so, I used the 4x5 camera while I was at college, but they made me give it back after. So I couldn't loan that out of the studio anymore and had to buy my own. And I did that probably about 7 years after I graduated. And so I still shoot 4x5 film now, slide film too, which is probably the hardest out of all the films to shoot. The latitude on it is about a stop and a half. So if you don't get it right, it's overexposed or it's underexposed. But when you nail it, which luckily after 25 years of practice, I've finally gotten to the point where I do that on a regular basis. It looks beautiful, and I still it's one picture I take with 4x5. I love telling people this. Digitally comes out to about 2.5 to 3 gigabytes a frame.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I mean, when you zoom in on it, I love Instagram because it's how a lot of people have found my work. But at the same point, like you really need to blow it up on the side of a wall, like a mural, because there's so much detail in them. And I mean, just even the process of like clicking the shutter, it's about $5 for each sheet of film, and then it's another $5 to get it processed. So I always joke, like every time I click the shutter, it's $10.
Wow. That's incredible. And I love seeing large format printed. It looks absolutely stunning. So for you, are you like where are you putting your artwork? Like, are you printing it out and selling it? Like, what do you do with all these large format prints?
Oh, I'm a perpetual hoarder. That's they're all here. I've got prints still that I've printed up by hand back in like the late '90s. But I do sell some work online. I have a couple of galleries. I don't update them nearly as much. There's a part of me that feels like I, I don't know. I love printed. I love seeing them printed, and I love people buying them. But I don't feel like people kind of appreciate the printed form as much anymore. So
Mm,
it's not something I overly pursue. I make sure that it's there because there are people who still love it, and I absolutely want them to have it if they do. But for the most part, I mean, I have a gallery up. You can get prints. Everything goes through a lab, unfortunately now, because printing up color slides, yeah, that they don't do that process anymore. It used to be called Cibachrome, and it ended around 2005 was like when the last Cibachrome print was ever made.
wow.
So yeah, you can't print directly from a slide to a piece of paper anymore. So everything is done digitally. But I send it to a really nice lab, and I get them glossy, and then everything comes to me, and I expect it. Put the little signature on there, do all that fun stuff that artists do. I've had a couple of gallery shows. I probably need to pursue it a little more, but it's life, wife, kids, full time. Trying to make money with the actual photo jobs as opposed to making money with this. So it's there's that aspect of it too.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about, photography gear, what other gear do you use when you're out exploring? For example, a tripod or a pair of shoes you prefer, a backpack, or anything like that?
Oh God, what don't I use? So let's see. Usually there's a drone with me. Then I have a 4K dedicated Sony like camera, like video camera, because I do beyond just taking like abandoned photos. This I have a journalism background, so there's a documentary aspect to this where I'm interviewing people, so I never know when that's going to happen. So on top of that, I've got the Zoom microphone, I've got lavalier mics in case I need to like randomly mic somebody up for on the spot interview. I typically only bring out two 35 millimeter bodies, sometimes three if I'm bringing out the film one, but they're all Canon. It just makes it easier with the interchangeable lenses
Right.
between all of them. So currently I'm all 5D. I got a 5D Mark II and a 5D Mark IV. Those are my two main bodies. And then, the old Canon 1N. Let's see what else. Then there's the 4x5 film camera is an Omega View. I want to say it's mid to early 70s model with a couple of different lenses. So the lenses, they're kind of interchangeable. You get the plate. So the body's Omega View, but the lenses, I want to say maybe one's a Toyo. Can't remember. I'll post it up later, I guess.
Perfect.
And then yeah, tripods. I got a really nice Manfrotto. I've got some really nice like video mono or video tripod that I bought for the video camera from B&H. Not a name brand, but it's rock solid. Backpacks, I've got oh God, this is gonna kill me that I cannot remember the name, and I'm looking right at it now. It's a really I want to say it's Think Tank, but I know it's not a Think Tank bag. And then, yeah, I mean, I trying to think what else I got down the list. Shoes. I got a really nice pair of LL Bean shoes when I was up in Maine from like 3 years ago that are amazing. And yeah, that's about it. You know, I could go into the vehicles because some of I've
Yeah,
always had a
yeah.
truck for the most part. Yeah, I started doing this with an old Toyota like pickup truck, like King Cab, before they even started calling them
Okay.
Tacomas,
Yeah.
and yeah, that took me all over the place. And then I had a Ford Explorer, which was not my favorite. It's more of a city SUV. I think my all-time favorite though was the one that I sadly just got rid of February of last year, which was I had a Nissan Xterra with the off-road package, which I mean that thing went over the top of the Rocky Mountains on uh, a, a rock path. I mean it was insane the places that this truck could get me, and now I'm just driving a Subaru Forester that I purposely got a 4-inch lift on when I bought it. So I was
Mm,
like I need ground clearance.
yeah,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
that's kind of like my gear kit, and then anything that keeps my 2 kids entertained when I'm bringing them out with me, because sadly they have to travel along with me on a lot of these because can't leave them home when my wife is working full time.
For sure, absolutely. And I think it's cool that we've had some guests on this podcast talk about how their parents got them into exploring. So, are your kids like getting this little bug for either travel or exploring as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the places that I take them, their teachers will tell me like some of the stories they're telling them. Like, it's funny they don't talk to me about it. They're 11 and 7 right now, but like apparently they tell everybody else about it. So it's not like, Dad, it's so cool that you're taking us to these places. It's like usually the whole ride is they're in the back seat going, I'm so bored. Can you turn your Wi-Fi on? So like we're in the middle of Nebraska. There's no Wi-Fi. I'm like, there's an R on my thing. It stands for roaming. I'm like, that's how far away from everything we are. Like you're just deal with it. But yeah, it was. I'll tell you what one of the neat things was, and that I love about doing this is we. Did you watch the Super Bowl by chance over the last weekend?
I watched parts of it. I'm not a big football fan. I'm more into UFC personally.
Well, this is more about the commercials, so
Oh,
you don't
okay,
have to
got
worry.
you,
We're not
got you. Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
So the Jeep Springsteen commercial that has now been pulled because apparently Springsteen got a DUI and they caught a lot of flack about it. But they went to the middle of Kansas, and more specifically, they went to the middle of the lower 48. It's this geographic area that is kind of precisely like where if you were to go from like all four corners, this would be the middle.
Mhm.
And we were just there in September, and then for them to do this Jeep commercial with Springsteen that's like a minute long, and it just highlights this place, and I'm sitting there like, boys, look, like where is this place? And like, oh my God, we were there. And I just that's what makes it. And as far as like my family, yeah, my dad was a big road tripper, and it was funny. I just talked to somebody about this last night, and I go, I don't know if maybe it was that he was, my mom we used to do road trips with my mom too, but they were more like we were traveling to get somewhere, so it wasn't so
Mm,
much a road trip as like flying was too expensive.
right, right.
So, but my dad, yeah, we would go everywhere. I mean, we'd take these epic trips to the East Coast, and we'd take this one where we went south to like, Alabama, and then cut across like Interstate 10 all the way to San Antonio to
Yeah.
visit, my grandfather. And, those were excellent. And it's sad. I'm kind of that, divorced kid kind of thing where, my dad and mom split up at 10 and my dad really kind of left. And, I wonder if, how I feel like I missed out on a good decade worth of road trips because of that divorce, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. But like I said, I think it's super cool that you're bringing your kids along and kind of getting them into this. I think it would be cool in like if I'm still doing this podcast in I don't know 5-6 years to get one of them on and talk about like how they came up in like the urban exploration world. Like that's so
Oh,
fascinating to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll gladly hit me up. I'll be like, I'll put the oldest one in 5 or 6 years. He turns 12 now. So yeah, he'll be 17. He'll be able to tell you exactly how bored he's been, I'm sure.
Awesome, awesome. So, do you have any urban exploration injury stories that you can share?
No, I am pretty rock solid. Like I've been hit by a car, fallen off of a roof, never broke a bone. I will knock on wood for that one right now and hope that it lasts. And this is going on 47 years now. Um, I blame it, on rugby and drinking a lot of milk. Like, I mean, I played rugby for like 8 years and never got injured there either. So I did almost get bit by a rattlesnake 2 years ago,
Oof.
but I have a good vertical, so I was able to kind of jump. I basically stepped right on him, and he was right underneath me, and
Woo.
I leaped about like 3 feet up in the air and went backwards with two cameras on me too. But so yeah, that's about the closest I've come to really getting injured. I don't. I will say this: I part of it might have to do with the fact that I don't do as much interior
Mm.
exploration as I used to. You know, number one, I got two kids with me most of the time, so like I don't want them like being stuck out in the middle of nowhere while I'm injured or possibly dead. And I'm not super fascinated with some of the interiors that I find. Also, not to mention, I don't like walking in on random stray animals, and
True.
so there's a bit of I've never really been onto the exploring of like giant abandoned places. So like as far as like an old steel mill or like brewery, I've never gone into a big place. There's been some places in Gary, Indiana that I've gone, like
Yeah.
because most of what I do is rural stuff. But it's a bug that you go from Rurex to Urbex. So being in Chicago and being this close to you know a plethora of abandoned places, it's tempting to go into them every now and again. So I do, but yeah, no, I've lucked out. I've not been injured, never stepped on a nail. Even I
Wow.
mean, worst thing that ever happened was I overheated my truck one time in North Dakota, and I was so far off the somebody had given me directions to this what they called the gem farm, because it was like this just absolute beautiful little pristine farm that had been empty since like the 50s,
Wow.
and it was like over a hill, and like I mean I was driving through grass that was up to the top of my like windshield, and that was when I was in the Explorer, which that thing sat like 10 inches 12 inches off the ground already. So
Yeah.
or at least that was a ground clearance on it. It was a big truck, but yeah. And so I left it running because the kid was young at the time. I think he was like 2. So it was summer. I had the air conditioner on, and it overheated and died. I'm like, no, 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 no.
Oh man.
Yeah, so that was one of the scarier moments. But yeah, so the car almost got injured. But yeah, no accidents, no injuries.
Good.
Poop filled car seat maybe once or twice. A few years back, that happens. You're not paying attention out, shooting some stuff, and the baby poops. But we're all good now.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know you do a lot of exteriors and stuff. First of all, how do you find these places? Is it word of mouth? Like, are you doing research online? How do you find these spots?
So yeah, it's all of the above, and then just luck. I
Mm.
mean, I've always I'm a lover of maps. I will, I can go down a rabbit hole and be on Google Maps for like 2 hours accidentally. And same thing with like atlases. I mean, I was the kid who, when National Geographic came, like I'd rip it open and like pull out the map. Like
Nice.
forget reading the stories. Like, and that's it's funny. National Geographic is the reason why I love maps and the reason why I wanted to be a photographer. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's why I got into photography. And yeah, so just finding a map, back in the day, long before Google Maps and GPS and cell phones, it was literally, I've got atlases, in a filing cabinet here in my home office that have the pen marks from where I would draw my paths,
Wow.
and the directions that I went. And what I would look for is places that didn't have a lot of cities. I would go to the in between areas. The farther away from interstates I could get, the better. Nowadays, I've kind of used census data to find those places, but then I have like a crazy Excel spreadsheet that tells me like population losses by like every decade from like 1900 up. So I can kind of graph and see like which place lost 40% of its population, which county lost 40% of its population in like the last, you know, 30 years. And I'll know to go there, and then I'll look at the region. And so that's kind of what I do. And then that's where I get some of my documentary stuff too. And then all the time, people will, give me stuff. And I have some friends that I follow, or people that I call my friends now, that I'll follow. And I'll be like, oh my God, that is the most epic looking place ever. If it's still standing, like, please, like, throw me the GPS
Yes.
coordinates. I need to go. And it's so funny. I have a book. My Google Maps is just one big bookmark thing. Like if you open it up, you won't see the map of the US. You'll just see all
Just
these little
dots.
bookmarks. If you're, yeah, just dots. So, you got to turn a couple of those off to actually see or zoom in a little bit. Um, yeah. So, I mean, and then, like I said, one of my favorite tricks, and anybody who's listening, you're getting a bonus material here. I don't tell that to this many people, especially out West. When you find a town and you will see like roads in the middle of town that are kind of diagonal, um, and then they kind of go out, and if you follow it with a satellite view on, you will see that there's almost like a line, and it looks kind of like an imaginary line in the dirt, but it's really there, and that's the old train tracks. Towns that used to have a train track started to die, and that's kind of another one somewhere else became the feeder point for bringing all the cattle or bringing all the grain. So when those train tracks got ripped up, towns started to die. When those train tracks got ripped up also, though, they connected the other towns along that line, and they all kind of went the same way.
Mm.
So if you happen to see these towns, like, follow those train track lines through the fields. I mean, it's amazing. Like, they've been 40, 50 years, those tracks have been pulled up, and you could still see farm fields that are kind of, scarred from where the track bed was.
Wow.
And you follow those, and you will find interesting things in the towns along the, there's, you'll find like grain elevators standing out in the middle of nowhere that, like, here's where the town used to be, and this is the only thing left, because they built those grain elevators like insanely tough. They're literally like 2x4s or like 4x4s, like stacked sideways on top of each other. They're nuts. But yeah, so that's a good trick. Look for the old train tracks when you're looking for like small town, that have seen some better days. You want some abandoned main streets, yeah, find a place that used to have train tracks running through it and go there.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then can you tell me about your scariest exploration?
So this is funny. There's one that I think it definitely has the best story. And then there's one that really scared the hell out of me, but nothing really ever happened. So the one that I think is probably the most story worthy is there's a town, used to be called Ardell. It's in Kansas, just outside of Dodge City. And there's two grain elevators. Actually, the grain elevator that is kind of like the logo for Lost Americana that's Ardell. You have a 4x5 camera, people tend to pull over. It takes me about a good 10 to 15 minutes to compose and like do a shot when I'm, working with that large format. And somebody pulled over and started talking to me like they normally do, like, "Oh, that's interesting. What do you got there?" They see you with the bag over your head like you're some old time, photographer in a Wild West show. And so the story goes that this place, apparently two people have died in this grain elevator, and it wasn't like some accident. Like, there were hitchhikers or transients that were kind of traveling up and down Route 56. I think it's like 5056 is the route that goes right along this thing. And they decided one of them just was, I guess, kind of done with life and, committed suicide in there. And the other one was traveling in winter, probably much like the winter that we're going through now. And he froze to death overnight. So
Wow.
that place that's on the cover of my photo and the logo on Instagram and everywhere else, that's probably one of the most haunted places I've ever shot, that I know of. The scariest place I was ever at was actually the Pueblo, kind of the Indian cliff dwellings that they have down there, right, I want to say in Colorado, like southern Colorado, right before you get to New Mexico. And I went to go there one night, and they had closed. I didn't know it was closed. Like, you couldn't get back to it. So the park is still open. You could drive around in there, but you can't get kind of too close to the actual dwellings. And it just had a really creepy feeling the whole time I was there. Like, the sun is just going down. It's really windy, mountainous area, kind of driving back through there. And it's like a 10-mile drive. And so the minute I got to the very end and couldn't, go in to see him, I'm like, okay, well, I got to turn around. I got to go find a hotel. It's getting dark. It starts snowing. And I just had this creepy vibe, like something didn't want me to leave that place alive. And I know it sounds really awkward, and especially, like, I'm not a big supernatural believer. I mean, I'm an atheist even, so it's like all that stuff is kind of out the window. But whatever it was, I'm leaving this place, and it just went to not even a whiteout condition. Like, I could still see far ahead of me, but enough snow had fallen that, like, you couldn't tell where the road stopped and where the, like, cliff began.
Oof.
So it was, it was really kind of creepy. And there was a point where I had to kind of like pull over in this like tunnel area that like went through a cliff and just kind of take a little breather because I was having like an anxiety attack. And,
Wow.
I'm from Chicago, so it's not like I'm not used to snow.
Yeah.
I mean, this is only like maybe like 3 or 4 inches too, but it was just, there was a creepy thing going on that night. And I was very happy to get out of that park alive. So that's the creepiest place.
Ooh, wow. I love hearing like the creepy stories and like the
They're
quote
fun.
unquote paranormal stories. Some explorers are super into that stuff. Some of them are
Oh
like,
yeah.
ghosts don't exist. Nope, nope, nope. You know what I mean? But it's always interesting to hear about those experiences. And personally, for me, there's a place here in California called the Downey Insane Asylum. I've talked about it extensively on this
Ah,
podcast, and
now I got to go back and look for that.
oh man, it's crazy. So it's supposedly extremely haunted, and there, you know how asylums used to be back in the
Oh yeah.
day. There's all these horror stories. Like I remember hearing a story about the Downey Insane Asylum where the SWAT team was like training there one day and opened up a freezer and there were like body parts in the freezer. So I mean,
Oh,
like just
yeah.
imagine the kind of stories that come out of these asylums that people explore. It's absolutely
Yeah.
madness.
I'm getting the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. And it's funny. One of my first jobs out of high school was working with mentally handicapped adults, and um, there were some long time kind of staff members there that had worked back in some of those places in like the 50s.
Wow.
And the stories that they would say about like you don't even like what was going on in some of these places was just so wrong.
Oh yeah.
And they're like I have nightmares just thinking about the stories they tell me, and like they saw them firsthand. I have no
Hmm.
idea how they managed to get through these. So yeah, insane asylums are one of those places I'm definitely bringing a friend.
Oh, for sure. Never go alone to an asylum. That's just a disaster
Yeah,
waiting to
that
happen.
sounds like a bad like that's the horror movie. Like you die first when you do that, just so you know.
100%.
You're the
100%.
beginning of the movie where it cuts and like our friend disappeared in the insane asylum.
Yep.
Like whatever could have happened, he went there alone. That's what
Oh,
happened.
of
He's
course.
stupid.
He's dumb.
Don't try to go save him now.
Yeah, exactly. So, since we're talking about, history of places, do you have a favorite history of a place you've explored?
I don't have a favorite history so much. I have places that I have fallen in love with. There's everybody's got their little place that I think, if you do this long enough. I mean, I was just telling somebody I'm 2 states away from being done with visiting all of the lower 48. And,
Okay, lower 48. I was like, all
and it,
50 or damn.
all, yeah, no, not all 50. I have not driven to Hawaii yet. I'm working on that one, but
It's hard to
I
drive
heard
there.
the bridge. I heard the bridge is very long, and you might fall asleep on it. So,
True.
um, but yeah, I've missed Washington and Oregon, which was
Mm,
supposed to happen last year, but COVID happened last year, so that
right.
that went down the tubes. But places that I love, Manchester, Kansas was by far it was my first love, my first heartbreak. I first went there in '08, and my jaw dropped. I'll never forget pulling up this street. Um, and it was like early in the, actually, no, it was, I went back the next day. It was one of the few places I stayed around just specifically to go to it again. It was that awesome. And it wasn't more than like, 4 or 5 buildings on a main street, but they were just breathtaking. I mean, I pulled up at the stop sign. I kind of like looked left, looked right, and I actually looked right, looked left. And then when I looked left, I saw this, it looked like a set from a movie for like Deadwood or something like that. I mean, it was straight out of the Wild West. And I remember not even fully pressing the brake on my truck, and I just kind of rolled through the intersection as my jaw was physically hitting the steering wheel. Like what? Um, and it was a beautiful place. I mean, this old opera house that was
Wow.
slash general store now, and these other little small buildings that were off to it. And it was a brick sidewalk with a clay dirt road. Main Street was literally still a dirt road in 2008.
Wow.
And so yeah, I stayed there and photographed it. Stopped back again in 2014 and was able to get a great. There's a photo on the About Me page on Lost Americana, or the About page on there, and it's got a picture of me and my 2 boys in front of the old store. And sadly, I think 2016 there was an earthquake in the area, and the building had already been kind of deteriorating, and it took the whole thing down. And I think the biggest thing that really kind of hurts me, and it's this I wrote a really great piece on my website about it, where it's just this kind of nostalgia is this literally is like Greek meaning for the pain of home, like this longing that you have for your home and places you can't go back to.
Mm.
Is that when I was there in 2014, I talked to a local and he said, well, yeah, he's like, the guy sold them all that owned, this old guy owned all of Main Street and was just kind of like, he was like retiring to retiring, like you get that age when you hit like 65 and you retire, and then you get to that age when you're like 75 or 80 where you're just like, oh yeah, I'm selling everything now
Yeah.
because I'm almost really dead this
Right.
time.
Right.
And so he put them up for an auction, and some schmo in New Jersey bought all of Main Street, like each building for like $800. And I was like,
Wow.
I'm sorry, what? Like I
Wow.
would have paid 3 times that. Like I
Yeah.
was getting ready to like drop 10 grand to buy this one building, let alone like all of Main Street. And so this thing where like not only did I miss this opportunity for like the one place that I really thought was one of the most beautiful little towns, untouched too, like just it was basically kind of an abandoned Main Street.
Wow.
And yeah, so I missed my opportunity to buy it, and then I no longer have the opportunity to photograph it anymore, and it just so that hurts.
Yeah, that's absolutely heartbreaking, man. I hate to hear that, but I mean, I love that you got to at least see it once, and experience it.
Yeah, I'm happy that I have. It's one of my favorite pictures ever, and it was like that before the place came down. So
Mm.
I'm glad, and that's kind of the reason why I do this. I keep telling everybody, I'm like, hey, I go out and do this. Like, I don't care if you, I was talking to a guy on Twitter. I got a lot of farmers that follow me on Twitter. Photographers follow me on Instagram. Farmers follow me on Twitter. And one of these guys, he's talking about how he keeps seeing this. I was posting up photos of silos a couple weeks back. And he's like, oh yeah, there's this one that's leaning and I see it like every day on my way to work. And I'm like, take a picture of it, man. Like
Yeah.
you got to photograph it. Just to prove that it was there. I'm like, I can't be everywhere, especially with kids. Like I
Yeah.
really can't be. So another great place is, and I think I'm going to butcher the name, but I want to say it's Gormania, West Virginia. And it has this really kind of Main Street vibe to it. And unfortunately I was there in like the dead of night. And so I took this like kind of long exposure and used like the cars that were driving down the highway, or not even a highway, it's just like a 2-lane street right in front of it. And it's like right there before I think you get to the Maryland border. But just this cool little old mining town that there's nothing left, but you could see that at some point when the mines were really going, it had this, great little Main Street, and it's just sitting all there untouched,
Wow.
empty, that wonderful gray wood that's been chipped away from all its paint and just sitting there fading in its glory.
Ugh.
But yeah, that's another good one that I could think of right off the bat.
Wow. And besides Washington and Oregon, do you have any bucket list items, like bucket list places that you want to go? This can be either U.S. or international.
Canada. I have a couple of people that I follow in Canada, and damn it all if they don't make me jealous with their grain elevators that they have up there in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I mean, they're just because that whole plains area. I don't know if you've ever been out to like Nebraska and the Dakotas. There's no trees out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a little bit of trees now, but it's because the Europeans that came out there, Eastern settlers, planted trees. But like there was no trees, and Alberta and Saskatchewan are still kind of like that. It's just nothing but like flat fields as far as, I mean, there's a little bit of rolling. It's not completely flat, and then they just have these giant grain elevators in the middle of nowhere where the town used to be. And they're like, I don't want to say they're everywhere because each year I see like a couple more of them came down, burned down, but yeah, so Canada, just over the border there into Canada is where I want to go, up into Alberta and photograph those grain elevators and some of that. I keep joking that I'm going to call it like Lost Canadiana.
That's awesome.
So I gotta go grab that website really quick before this podcast goes
get
live.
that domain. It's probably like $10. Get it. Just get it. Just get it. Just do it.
I'll just camp on it.
Yeah, just camp on it. It's fine. And then if you could live in one place you've explored for 1 week, which place would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. Because, like I was saying, like, honestly, I've been working on doing this post where I'm going to like the town that I would live in each one of your states, like pick a town in like every state and be like, yeah, this place I visited and I'd love to live there. Oh, if I could live in one for a week. Oh, Yeah, that's one God, I wish you would have like sent that to me in advance. I mean, Manchester obviously would have been the easy go-to.
Right.
Um, let's see. I mean, it's a really tricky question. And I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that.
That's okay.
Um,
No worries.
it'd be. I'll tell you right now. If it was going to be anywhere, it would probably be in Nebraska. I am a I am a big fan of Nebraska ever since I've been there. The first time I went through, I was so surprised because everybody talks about it being flat and like highways and corn, and you actually get off of I-80 and go north into that state, and there's rolling sand dunes and these sand hills, and there's these like Butte Mountains out in the west, and there's river valleys in the east, and it's just Nebraska's awesome. People like get to Nebraska like once in your life and just drive like so. Yeah, I'd probably it would be somewhere in the middle of Nebraska.
Love it. Love it. And then my final question for you is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started exploring?
Oh wow, that honestly, I think the biggest thing is that and it wasn't so much when I started exploring, I guess, but I've been wanting to do a book, and it was always when I first started doing this back in like college, like I said, when I really got serious about it, somewhere around like 97, 98, I had a 10-year plan, and I wanted to get a book published. And obviously in the 90s, getting a book published doesn't sound as ridiculous as it does now because it seems like books are almost dying. But I think the thing that's held me back for at least like the last decade is I always felt like I needed to have this critical mass of people that followed me or were on my email list. And like I kept wanting to get somewhere, but never had a set number. I just knew that I wanted to have more because I didn't want to just put a book out and have like a couple of, like, oh, here's 200 copies that I made. And it was mostly like friends and family. And I think now knowing that like there's a lot of time that I wasted, I could have already had like 2 or 3 books that were maybe a smaller run, but got me kind of the beginning of the kind of publicity to get me more people so that,
Mm-hmm.
this work that I'm doing can be seen by more people. I mean, the part of the reason why most of what I do is labeled or branded as Lost Americana is because I never really wanted the story to be about me. And I mean, if you go and read, especially on the Instagram post, I wax intellectual about all sorts of issues in rural America and with, leaving places. I do a lot of writing for a publication called The American Conservative. They have a section called The New Herbs, which is kind of, I think it's short for like New Urban, but where I talk a lot about like population decline in rural areas and some of the things that are affecting a lot of these towns throughout America. And so it's that's what it is. I think just one of the things that I've learned is like just don't sit on something, like just go out and do it, and you know don't try to wait around for it to go viral. Like just
Mm-hmm.
put something out there. I think best thing I ever heard, I was doing a college graduation, I was photographing it, and the keynote speaker said done is better than perfect.
Wow.
So I think that's my lesson there. Done, get something done. Doesn't matter if it's perfect, doesn't matter if it's got the perfect audience, just get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking from experience, like I have a book out called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary, and it's my first photography book, and it's not perfect, but I did it. I sold a couple copies. I self-published because I initially got hit up by a company
Nice.
that wanted to take like a huge percentage from me to publish my
Uh,
book, and I was like,
do they want to give you 8% only of your?
something. It was like 6 or 8%, and I
I
was
know
like,
that
nah.
company, and yeah.
Oh yeah, we can talk about them after the
Sure,
podcast.
yeah.
But yeah, so they hit me up, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this myself. Like I have all the photos, I have all the stories, so like why not just make my own book? So
Absolutely.
if you ever need any advice on doing that or who to publish, like self-publish with, just let me know. I would love to help you go in the right
Yeah,
direction with
no,
that.
no, absolutely. It's I've I have a lot of friends that have like I said, it's funny, and this is part of the going back to the done is better than perfect. Part of my issue is I have friends that have won Pulitzers already, so like
Oh yeah.
that's my thing. Like I leave the house in the morning to like go out on a photo shoot, and I'm like I got to try to be better than so and so, and
Mm,
this person because like they won a Pulitzer, and so it's like, and these are the buddies that I'm talking to. So it's great, like when they're like, oh my god, Vince, that was an awesome picture, and I'm like, that means so much to me, even though
yeah.
we're friends, it's still, it's kind of a nice feeling. But yeah, at the same point, like I kind of measure myself by them, and sometimes I forget that the majority of the people that are going to be buying a book or buying a photo didn't win a Pulitzer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, maybe I need to stop living up to that expectation and just make the people that, I mean, like I said, I think I'm up to like 16,000 people on Instagram. The Facebook's not that much, but, clearly I don't think there's that many Pulitzer winners in there. I know there's a couple,
True.
but yeah. So, just get on, publish a book for the people, I guess, instead of, publishing it. And this goes back to like the displaying stuff in like galleries. It's like trying to make way into like the gallery space and like that art crowd it's really hard.
Yeah.
And this will probably not get me into any galleries, but like there's a little bit of a snobbery that goes on with it.
True.
So, and it's that whole trying to be perfect for what they want, but it is what it is. So I'm just, my goal for this year is get it done, get that book done. And if it's got to be self-published, I got a couple of publishers that I'm kind of pitching stuff to right now. Got a little bit of feedback. So I'm crossing my fingers that, I don't have to self-publish, but at the same point, like if I do, I'm not, I've gotten over that stigma about it. I think, especially nowadays, I've seen so many people do it and do it well, and then be like, I did a published book through a publisher and I made way more money when I actually self-published. And, it's not about the money, but like when it comes down to like certain things that you worry about, you're like, am I going to go broke if I do this? And
right.
Like, no, you won't. Like, you'll cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And my 5-year goal is to create a museum about urban exploration. And I want to put these, like, how some people will take things from abandoned places? Like, I want to have them donate these artifacts and like have people donate their prints and give their prints. And I just, it's a huge goal of mine. So I would love to have a Lost Americana section in a museum one day. I think it would be super cool.
Hell yeah. I like that idea. You let me know when you're doing that. I try not to take things that often, but I will say occasionally there are things that, are, when you got a building that's falling apart, some of it's just lying there in the dirt, off to the side. So, I might have a piece. I've actually been thinking about framing some of my photos around some of these pieces. But
oh, cool. Love that. So if people want to continue to follow your journey, if they want to pick up a photo print, where can they find you online? What's the best place? Drop your social media, your website, all that good stuff.
I am a branding maven. So everything, if you go to Instagram, you go to Twitter, everything is just /Lost Americana. No space, just Lost Americana, and you will find me. Even better, you could just go to lostamericana.com, and there is a link to each one of the socials that I have. And if you're really clever, you could even find them on some socials that I don't list there, but I just went and grabbed them because I'm like, oh, this is new. So anybody have a Clubhouse invite they want to give me so I can make sure that Lost Americana gets picked up on Clubhouse by me and not by somebody else, that'd be great too. But yeah. Nice. Sweet. Kay, you're the best.
All right, guys, that was my episode with Lost Americana. That was one of the best episodes that I've done. We talked about so much, and he shared so many of his incredible stories. And I love that he takes his kids with him on these trips. Like, that's one of the coolest aspects of what he does as a photographer and as an adventurer and explorer, is that he's bringing his kids up in this world of urban exploration. And I think that's super cool. If you enjoyed this episode of the No Tracers podcast, please do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback at the bottom of the No Tracers podcast page on Apple Podcasts. And if you do that, I will actually give you a signed photo print for free from an abandoned place that I have explored. If you guys are new to the podcast, please hit that subscribe button. And if you are a veteran listener, please share this podcast with somebody or a few people. Share it on your social media. I would love to get more people to listen to this show. And if you want to be on the No Tracers podcast, please just shoot me a DM either on Instagram at no.tracers or on TikTok at no tracers, and we will schedule a time for you to come on No Tracers and share your stories. I would love to do these twice a week this year, and with your help, we can make that happen. If you guys know someone that should be on the podcast, please share this podcast with them and have them reach out to me so that we can get them on the show. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next Friday for another episode of the No Tracers podcast. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, go explore something, and remember, leave no trace.